So let's get started with creating a contract. If you happen to have the contract dashboard as your home page, you'll be able to create a contract directly in this quick link section right here where it says create new contract. So you'll be able to click that link. Otherwise, if you're on another page or if you don't have this as your home page, what you can do is scroll over contracts and then contracts again, and then click create new contract. So this is going to be how you can start the drafting of a brand new contract. So you'll start by giving the contract a name, and you'll want to be as descriptive as you can so that if you have to kind of pick out this contract from a listing of other contracts in the future, you could easily recognize and understand, okay, yeah, I remember, that contract, and this is what kind of what it was for, right? So we don't want hundreds of contracts just named like SOW or something like that, right? It's not going to be our master enabling agreement. That's not going to be helpful later on when we try to identify the contracts. So I'm going to call this one. Okay. And then we're going to select a contract type. So if you know the contract type, you'll be able to just start typing it and you can select it. If you don't know the contract type, what you can do is click on this little magnifying glass, and we'll see this throughout the application. This will give you a listing of contract types that you have available to you, and then you can select it. Or in the case if it was an IT, you could select IT and then select the appropriate option. And then click Save Changes. And next, you're going to select the work group. So for many of you, the work group will be pre-selected because you'll be associated with one work group in particular, right? So if I click on this and I start typing Sonoma, for example, it's going to pull up Sonoma State University, and I can simply select that from the list. So like I mentioned, a lot of you will only be tied to one work group as a contract creator. So that one will pop up for you automatically. The next option here is one that you won't utilize particularly early on in the implementation of this software, but you'll start to use it more and more as we build out the system more. So that's this main document template. So the main document template is what you would think of today as kind of the Word document that may turn into a PDF that is the contract record, right? The actual document. So like I said, we're not going to have a lot of main document templates pre-built out for you in the very beginning. What we're going to do is utilize this time to kind of gather feedback and build out those templates as we go live and start utilizing the system. So right after we go live, like I said, you won't be selecting a main document template. What you'll be doing is just uploading a document later on. So you might be uploading the second party paper, or you might be uploading something that's built out custom. But we hope in the near term future or somewhere down the road, we'll have these templates built out for you. But if you are selecting one of those templates, like I said, you can click in here and start typing in the name of the template, and then you can select it. And then conversely, you can also click on this little magnifying glass and select it. And just FYI, these templates are related to the contract types, right? So we might have 1 or 2 or 5 or 10 different services main document templates, but we'd have a different selection of goods main document templates, or IT related main document templates, or student agreement main document templates. So just FYI, the main document templates will vary based on the contract type. And like I said, for your purposes, the majority of the time, you're not going to select this main document template right after we go live. But I wanted to show you what it looks like if we do have a main document template in the system. So we'll go ahead and create the contract. And as you can see, the system automatically generates a contract number for us. The contract name is here, as well as the contract type and the work group. I can optionally provide a summary. So if I click Edit Summary, I can type in a summary for this contract. Okay. Next, you can designate a contract parent or a parent contract for this contract. So if you're authoring, essentially what would be a statement of work, but there was a master services agreement, you could designate the master services agreement that this contract is related to. So to do that, you can click in here and you can start typing in the number of the contract. So you could say C-CPP and then dash, and then you can start typing in that information. Or again, just like in other areas, you can click on the little magnifying glass, find the contract, and select it. So there's a couple of ways that you can do that. Next, you can also dictate whether you want to use electronic signature for this contract. So you're only going to say yes to this if you are authoring the contract in the system and you want to get it electronically signed through this system. So if you had previously gotten the document electronically signed outside of this process, you would say no here. If you're getting the contract manually signed, with a wet signature, you would say no here. You're only going to say yes here if you want to use the electronic signature functionality that's available in this tool. So I'll show you what that looks like, both when I say no to electronic signature and also when I say yes to electronic signature. Okay. Next, you can designate whether or not you want to show this contract in the supplier portal, yes or no. And you can associate a value to this contract. Okay. Below that, we can add a contracting party. So we can click on Add Party and then select our second party. And then we can search for that second party. And maybe we're going to select this second party and click Add Contract Party. And then if the contracting party that you're doing business with has a contact and address, you'll be able to select the contact and address here. Not necessary, but you can select that information. Below that, we have their dates and renewals associated with the contract. So you'll notice that time zone defaults to Pacific Standard Time. And then we can select a start date for the contract, and we can select an end date for the contract. If the contract is evergreen or it has no expiration date, we can select no expiration here instead of designating an expiration date. But we'll go ahead and designate an expiration date for this contract. You can use these little toggles here to zoom out and get to a date further in the future. Okay, next we have the review dates and the review terms. So if you want the system to just generally remind you or send you an email notification to review the contract at some future date, you can specify a review date for the contract. So I can say, okay, in 2022, on July 28th, I want the system to send me a notification asking me to review the contract. So that's essentially what the system will do. It'll just send you an email telling you to review the contract. So you can have that be a specific date and time, one-time event, or you can have it occur ever so often, right? So I can say, I want to start receiving, to continue to receive them every 6 months for a total of 3 additional times. So this will set up essentially a schedule to have the system remind you to review the contract in this schedule of dates. So this is functionality that is optional. You'll notice that the fields that are optional do not have a star. So I can leave these all blank and then the system is not going to remind me to review the contract at all. So you can choose to use this or not. There are also renewal options available for the contract as well. So you can designate whether you want the contract to renew, and you can also specify whether you want it to automatically renew or if you want to manually start the renewals. So you can say, okay, I've got 2 renewals remaining after this end date, and you can say, I want the renewal terms to be 6 months each. So as you're coming up on December 2025, the contract can be set up to renew for an additional 6 months up to 2 times. And we can manually trigger that by going into the contract actions and renewing it, or we can have the system automatically start a draft auto renewal. So again, this functionality is all optional, so you can choose to use it or not. So we can certainly leave this all blank, and then the system would not automatically trigger renewals or offer renewals. Okay, below that we have some general contract information. So just FYI, all of these custom fields are they are all specific to the contract type. So the custom fields may vary if it's a construction contract versus a student agreement versus a service or a good or an IT. So these contract custom fields do vary, and you'll want to take a look at these while you're reviewing the system and just make sure that they make sense to you. So we can go in and select a general services category. And we can say maybe this is maintenance, non-public works, and we can designate whether this is auxiliary, stateside, or both. Whether it involves multiple campuses or not. So if we say yes, the system's going to ask us for the campuses that are involved. If we say no, it's not going to. We're going to designate whether this is which agreement type this is. So we'll say master enabling agreement. We can designate whether it's SB, DVBE, micro. So if we say yes to that, it's going to ask us the types. We can designate services involved, temp labor, subject to prevailing wages, subcontract involved, fixed fee, or contracting rate. So if we say fixed fee, it's going to ask us for the total contract amount in words. If we say rate, it's going to ask us for that numeric rate, and it's also going to ask for that rate in words. So we can give that information. So we said it was going to be $30,000. So let me just put this in all lowercase. Okay, travel involved, scope of work. Okay, purchase order number if applicable. And then you can also provide your accounting information. So these fields are all optional. You'll notice any of the fields that do not have a star are optional. So we'll go ahead and click next. And we can see that there's no alternate language for this particular contract template. Again, this alternate language page is going to be left blank for the majority of your contracts. So you'll notice we've got a note here and that says, if this page is blank, please click the next button. So the next page are the contract attachments. So here you can attach any additional documentation you want for the contract record. So we can see that I used a main document template. So obviously that main document is already here available for me. I can download that main document template and edit it if I need to by either clicking on this main document, or I can click open main document here. So if you were starting from scratch and you weren't starting from this contract template, what you would do, this would be removed first and foremost. So this wouldn't be here. In this attachment section, like I said, if you were not using one of the pre-built main document templates, which is going to be the case, you're going to click on Upload Main Document Template, and then you'll click Upload Main Document, and then you will select it from a file, and you'll select the file that you want to upload. Okay, and then you'll say yes for print with full contract, and click Save Changes. So that's how you'll upload your main document template in the future. But I'll go ahead and remove this one and just go ahead and use our template because I want to show you some features and functionality that come with a template. Okay, so now that we're using our template again as our main document, what I'd like to do is go ahead and click on Open Main Document. And we'll open this up. Now, if I'm using the Jagger Word app to author my contracts, what I can do when I open up this main document is I can say Enable for Editing, and I can click on this little Jagger icon. Just FYI, in order to get this icon, what you're going to do is go to Insert, Get Add-ins. You'll search for the Jagger Word app, so just search for Jagger. And then in the test environment, you would select this option to add the test environment Jagger contract authoring app. If you're doing this in production, what you do is you'd select this add-on app. So after you add this, when you go to the home page, you'll see that this icon is available. So you can click on this, and then you'd be asked to enter in a code that you'll select in your profile, and maybe even and also a password, and that'll log you into the Jagger Word app. So logging into the Jagger Word app is going to do a few things for you. One, obviously I can go in here and I can make updates to the document. But also I have access to the clause library. So if I want to go in and insert a clause somewhere, what I can do is click on Approved Clauses, and I can search for the clause. So if I know the name of it, maybe I want to search for something with the word rider, right? I can search for rider, and there it is. It's right there. So I can insert a clause, and there it is. So I have successfully inserted the clause. Now you can use the clause library to insert just a single clause, or you can use the library to insert entire riders or entire addendums or what have you. So it's pretty flexible in that way, but using the Jagger Word app will allow you to do that. A couple of things also to note about using a template. We can build in what are called placeholders, which will automatically populate information into the template for you, like this contract number, second party name. So there's different information that can automatically populate in there for you. So I'm going to just go ahead and update this service provider identification number. And I'm going to go ahead and just check in this change. So to do that, if I'm using the Jagger Word app, all I have to do is click check in. I can designate the changes I've made. And then if I want to keep it checked out to me, but put the changes into the system, but keep the contract record checked out so I can make additional changes, I would check this box and click OK. And now I can close this. I don't have to save it anywhere because I'm using the Jagger Word app. And if I refresh this, you'll notice now I'm on to version 2 of this main document. So if I click on Actions, I can then click on Version History, and I can compare the versions of the documents, right? So let me select these two and click Compare. And when this comes up, essentially it's going to highlight some of the changes that I've made, right? So I updated this. So that's how you can use the version history, and you can use the comparison that's available in the application. Now, if I did not have the Jagger Word app, essentially what I would do is I would still download the document, but I would make the changes in Word, and then what I would do is I'd go to Actions here, and then I would simply just upload a new version. So you can still update the main document and not use the Word app, but it isn't quite as convenient because I do have to download it and save it and upload it. And also, using just regular Word, I'm not going to have access to the clause library that the team will build out for you. So always best to use the Jagger Word app where you can, but if you don't have access to it and can't get access to it, you can still make those changes in Word and then just upload those as a new version. So that is an option. Additionally, if you need to add clauses, like I said, you can add clauses to the end of the main document, but you can also add additional attachments. So to do that, you'll just simply click Add Attachments. And then you'll select the file from your computer. Okay, and then after you select the file, it's going to look like that. And then you can essentially designate whether or not you would want this to print with the full contract or not. So if you say, yes, I want it to print with the full contract, what that's going to do is it's going to roll up all of the contract documents that have been designated as yes, print with full contract into a single PDF document later on in the process. And that's the document that would essentially go out for electronic signature if you've sent it out for electronic signature, right? However, if this is an attachment or a document that you just want to keep for internal use purposes, and it should not, maybe it's just an internal note or some kind of internal, memo or message that you wanted to keep but not be included in the full print order, you can always say no here, and that document would not be included with the full PDF document and would not actually be sent out for electronic signature if you designated it that way. Okay. And these also come with version history, so you can upload different versions of those documents as well. All right, so let's move on to obligations. So I'm going to click next and go to obligations. So here under obligations, this is essentially similar to the functionality that we covered a little bit earlier around reviews, except in obligations, not only are you able to specify a date that the system will remind you, but you can also tell the system what the obligation is, so you can be a little bit more specific, and you can also designate who in your organization would receive the notifications about the obligation. So that's the nice thing about obligations. To add an obligation, you're just going to click Add Obligation, and then you'll click Add New Obligation, and then you'll give it a name and a description. So we'll call this one Insurance Requirements, and for a description, we'll say okay. You can optionally tag it if we have tags in the system for you. You can specify whether a document is required to mark this obligation as complete. So when somebody is saying this obligation is complete, if you check this box, they're going to have to upload a document to prove that the obligation is complete. And then you'll set up a frequency for the obligation. So you can designate whether this is a one-time obligation or a recurring obligation. If you say it's a one-time obligation, you're just going to specify the date. So you can see the options here, and if you choose custom date, you can specify the specific date. Or you could make this a recurring obligation. And in a recurring obligation, you're going to set up a schedule for this recurrence. So you can say, I want this obligation to go out every 6 months. And you can specify a date for when that would start. So you can say, I want this to go out every 6 months starting on January 14th. And you can continue on. Okay. Next, you're going to set up the owners and stakeholders for this obligation. To do that, you'll click Add New. And you can specify first-party owners, so that'd be owners at CSU or Cal State. You can specify whether they'd be a first-party stakeholder or a second-party stakeholder. So we'll just go ahead and add a first-party stakeholder for now, or first-party owner for now. And we'll just say it's the contract manager who's going to be responsible for this. And we'll give them a task or a note. So we might say, Okay. And then we can designate which notifications they would receive. So would they receive an advance notification before this is due, a due date notification, a past due notice if it didn't get marked as complete until after it's passed, or do we want to send out a completed notification? So when the owner marks it complete, do we notify this person? So I would say probably not completed notification. And then we can just add one stakeholder, or we could add multiple stakeholders. So I can say save and add another, and I can add second party stakeholder, and I could designate their name, give them a task like okay, and then designate the notifications I want to send to them. But we'll go ahead and close that. And for now, we'll just add the contract manager as the person who's going to be notified about these obligations. And then if you're sending out these advance notices, you can designate how far in advance they'd be sent out. So I can say, you remind the contract manager 60 days in advance about this, 30 days in advance, and 15 days in advance. If I didn't want to send out all three, I can remove this. So the system would only remind them 60 days out and 30 days out. So once I've finished this all up, I can click Save Changes. And as you can see, the system's going to set up a reoccurring schedule to remind me to collect insurance in relation to this contract. So this is the schedule it's come up with. As these are completed, the contract manager can go into the system under Actions and mark these as complete whenever they've been completed. Okay, so let's continue on. Next, we're going to go into review rounds. So review rounds are essentially a way for you to notify people inside or outside of the organization that they need to review the contract. That'll allow them to make the necessary changes to the contract, and then go ahead and reply back and provide those changes back to you. So we've got internal review rounds for people inside of Cal State who have accounts in this system. And then we have external review rounds for you to send the contract document out to your second party, and also to maybe even Cal State individuals who don't have access to the system, or third party legal counsel. So you can kind of designate who you want to send those external review rounds out to. So let's start by creating an internal review round. I'm going to do that by clicking the button, Create Manual Internal Review Round. And I'll go ahead and click Add Reviewer. You can have one reviewer per round, or you could have 10 or 20 or however many you need to. And you can also have multiple review rounds, right? So you can have one person in a review round, wait for them to complete their review. And then once they've completed it, you could create another review round to a different department. So you can kind of use it however you need to. But in this case, we'll go ahead and just add a reviewer. And we can search for them. And we can select them. Let's search for local. Okay. And once you're done adding all the reviewers in an individual review round, you can click Begin Round. And you can give the reviewers a message. And then you can click Begin Internal Review. So now you'll notice that the status of the contract has changed from draft to internal review. And now this internal reviewer, if they've signed up for notifications, they can be notified when they need to go in and review a contract. So that's essentially what this reviewer has done. You'll see that I've got an email notification here, and it's let me know that there is a contract that is ready for my review. So I can click into this link here to get into the contract, or if I'm already logged into the system, so here's another user profile that I have. This is the user profile for the person who's responsible for reviewing the contract. They've also signed up for in-app notifications. So the in-app notifications trigger this little bell icon to have these in-app notifications. And I can click on these to review the contracts. So I can go ahead and select this contract here. And here's the one that I need to review. Now, just like your contract managers or contract admins, if your internal reviewer has access to the Jagger Word app, that'll make it a little bit easier for them to process their review. If they don't have access to the Jagger Word app, they can still do their internal review. They would just need to download the document, make the changes, upload it, and then manually mark themselves as done with their review whenever they're ready. But I tell you what, let me go ahead and show you the process of creating the Jagger Word app, and then we can continue on with authoring the contract. So before I get into this, I'm actually going to go into my profile, and I'm going to click View My Profile, and then I'm going to click App Activation Codes, and I'm going to add the Microsoft Word app to connect my user profile in here with the Jagger Word app in Word. So I'll go ahead and click Add Microsoft Word, select my PC. I'm doing this for myself, so I don't need to email myself. So I'll just click No, and I'll click Add Device. And I'm going to copy this code that I'm going to put into Word in a little bit. Okay, so now what I can do is go into Word. Okay, and again, I showed you a little earlier how to add this Jagger Word app to your ribbon. And right now my profile is actually logged in as a different user, but you wouldn't have that problem. We'll go ahead and activate our code, and I'm going to put in password that you may need to provide. Oops, wrong one. That's better. All right, so now I've connected my user profile in Jagger with the Jagger Word app by putting in that code. So now when I go to review the contract, one second. There it is. What I can do is I'm going to go to Actions, and I will check out the document. And I will go ahead and open the main document. And I'll go ahead and make my changes. So I'll enable editing, show the task pane, and it's already checked out to me. So I can go in and just make a small edit here. Maybe we'll go ahead and remove or update this. Okay. And then once I'm done, and we'll also maybe update this as well. When I'm done, I can go ahead and check it in, and I can specify what I've done. And then I can keep it checked out to me or not. In this case, those are all the changes I need to make, so I'm not going to keep it checked out to me. I'm just going to say OK. And something special happens here with an internal reviewer. They also get the option to say that they're done with their review. I don't need to do anything else. All done, and OK. And now I can exit out of Word. Again, I didn't have to save anything to my desktop. I didn't have to do anything. I was able to successfully check out the document, make my changes, check it in, and mark myself as done with my review, all in one process. Right now, if I was, and now I'm switching back to the contract administrator. By the way, I'm done with that internal reviewer. If the reviewer did not have the Jagger Word app, what they would have to have done was obviously download the document, make the updates. They would upload the document in the internal review round, and they'd also have to mark themselves as done with the internal review rounds here as well. So Couple more steps if you don't have the Jagger Word app, still possible, but just FYI, it's a lot cleaner and easier if you do have the Jagger Word app. So next, let's take a look at starting an external review round. So to do that, I'm going to click Start External Review Round. And this is where I'm going to go ahead and add my reviewer. And so I can go ahead and put in their name. And click Save. And just like in the internal review rounds, you can have one internal reviewer, or you could have 2 or 5 or 10 or however many. And you can have as many of these external review rounds as you need as well. But for this case, I'm just going to have one external review round, and I'm going to go ahead and click Begin Round. And you can designate which attachments you want to include in this external review round. So if I wanted to share with them the sample spec document, I could. Or if I wanted to say, no, that's really an internal document that I don't need to share with the second party, I can uncheck that. I could also include a full PDF version of the current contract, update my from name, email address, subject, and also the body of the message. So you can edit this if you need to. Once you're done, you're going to go ahead and click Send Email. And this is going to send the notification to the second party and allow them to get that email and start editing the document. So let's take a look at that. Let's take a look at the communication first, and then we'll take a look at the email that the second party would receive. So if we go into Communication Center, we can see that there is one external communication. So I can click on External, and we see this is the communication that was sent out to our second party. So they have received that communication, or they will receive that communication rather. So I can click on this, and here we can see the original notification that was sent out. So we can see the from name, okay, it was from me, it was sent to this person at this email address. And we can see the body of the message that I sent out. Okay. And then we can also change the subscribers or add to the conversation. So I could send another message or, kind of a response to this. I could change the subscribers. So if I click change subscribers, I can remove people. So if I originally sent it out to 3 people, but really it only should go out to 2, I could add or remove subscribers to this notification. So if somebody sends you one of those notes saying, hey, quit bugging me about this, you can always remove them from these response chains going back and forth. And then once I'm ready, once the second party is ready, they're going to get essentially they're going to get that email, and they'll be able to go in and respond to your message. So it's going to take just a moment to get that message. So while we wait for that message, I'm going to go ahead and cover the contacts just to show you what that looks like. So let's go into, while we're waiting for that message to get to our second party, let's go to users and contacts and talk about users and contacts. So users and contacts are essentially the people who have access to your contract record. So there's going to be a listing of users who have access to it based on the work group, right? So I created this in the Sonoma work group. So by default, Jennifer and maybe Joy automatically have access to fully amend or change my contract just because of the work group that I created it out of. And we may have other contract managers who have access to view it, and stakeholders have access to view the contract as well. But you can also designate additional people to have access to your contract. So if you were working with another university in the system on a contract and you wanted them to help you author the contract, you could click Edit Users here. And you can click Individual, and you can start typing in their name. And we could select Lori, for instance, and click Save Changes. And now Lori has been added as a contract manager in my contract. So now she's going to be able to go in and make changes and help me draft this contract. So that's one way that you can use the tool to help you work together in creating contracts that may span multiple universities. If we need to, though, we could also go back in and remove people, click Save Changes, and there we go. You can also make contracts confidential. So if this was a very sensitive contract, maybe it was, you know, a human resources contract or something like that, and we need to make it to where only, you know, the person who authored the contract and maybe people with special super user permissions could see the contract, we could always click Make Confidential and say yes. And now all the people from the work group would no longer have access to this contract. Only the people in this users and contacts would have access to it. And also, of course, people with super user permissions. So we'll go ahead and just make this not confidential. Okay. There are also visibility controls that you have access to. So you can designate, you know, for those users who have the ability to manage other contracts and they have access to this contract record, what can they see, right? Can they see the full contract or just a partial view of the contract record or a limited view of the contract record? And you can see what that view looks like by clicking on this preview, right? So, you know, they'd be able to see all of this header information, the dates and renewals, the contract manager, the additional details, the attachments. And then for these all the other users, I can say maybe just I want them to have a partial view, right? So if I click Save Changes and I click Preview, you'll notice they have a much more limited view, right? They're not able to see any of the attachments or anything like that. So you can limit access to the users based on this set of visibility controls, and then you can limit any access at all by making a contract confidential. So those are some of the visibility controls you have. If we go into notifications, you can designate which notifications would go to which users about when the contract is about to start, or when the start date occurs, or when the end date's about to occur, or when it occurs, or renewal or review dates. So by default, no one gets notified about any of this. So you'd need to, if you wanted those notifications to go out, you'd have to designate, okay, I want my contract manager to know in advance when the end date is going to come up. And I also want them to know when the end date passes. But maybe for my stakeholders, I want them to know when it passes, but I don't need them to receive these advance notices, right? So you get to designate which groups of users would be notified about these different things, about these different occurrences. So if you're sending out these advance notices for like the end date or the start date occurring, you can also set up how far in advance those notifications would go out. So I can say, I do want to notify the contract managers in advance that the end date is going to occur for this contract. And I can say in that advance notice for the end date, I want it to go out 60 days, 30 days, and 15 days before the end date. Or maybe I just want to send out 2 notifications and I would send it out 60 days and 30 days. So you can save those changes. And then here under contract family, just FYI, you can designate child contracts for this contract. And it also is going to host a link to any amendments or renewals you have to this original contract record. So to link a child to this contract, you can click on this button and find the contract using the filtering capabilities, and then you would select the contract, click Save Changes, and that would link that child contract to this contract record. So you can do that. You can also, if you were creating a child contract, instead of creating it from this left-hand menu, what you could also do is click on this little drop-down, and you could create a child contract directly from the parent contract if you had found it in a search. So those are some options you've got available. Let's go back to our communication center now, and let's actually take a look at the email that our second party received. So here's the email notification that they received. So we can see the body of the message, and then here's the attachment, including our main document template. So let's do this as the second party. We'll go ahead and download this attachment. And the second party, unfortunately, is not going to have access to the Jaggerword app. So they're going to have to do it the old-fashioned way of downloading the document, saving it, and then uploading a new version. So they might go in here and make certain changes. So just maybe remove all of these. And we'll go to File, and then Save As, and Browse, and they would save it to their document, or save it to their desktop, or wherever they want to save it. Okay, and they would respond back to your message. Okay, and then of course they would attach it. And send it to you. Okay, so that's what it looks like when the second party receives your external review. It's going to look really natural to your second parties, because to them it's going to look like you're just emailing them, and they're just going to respond back to your email with either just a message saying no, I don't need any changes, in which case you would just mark their internal review done, or they might respond back to you and say, yes, I did need these changes, and then they would download the document, make the changes, and in that email they would respond back to you with their changes. So should feel very natural to the second parties. Okay, so if we go back into our communication center, it usually takes just a little bit of time, but if we go to external review, should take a couple of minutes here, and the message will pop up, and it'll show us that we've got 2 messages associated with this conversation. There it is. So here's our other message. And as the contract administrator, you can sign up for these notifications that'll tell you whenever the second party has responded back. So as you can see, this is the email notification that my contract admin got, kind of letting them know that the second party responded back. And as the contract admin, I can review the attachment that the second party provided and compare it against the document that was already in the system and decide whether or not I can accept their changes or not. So what I can do is go to Actions, and I can click on Compare With. So I'm going to compare the second party's version of the document with my main document. So I'll click Compare. And again, what it's going to do is it's going to highlight the changes that the second party has provided. So we can see we've got a lot of extra highlighting in this document, but this is the changes that they made here. So if I wanted to, I could go ahead and continue on into Word and adjust it as necessary. But in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, you know what, the changes that the second party made are fine. So I'm going to add or update the main document, and I'm going to use their version of the document as our new version of the main document. And click Save. All right, so now I have accepted the second party's changes. I can go into review rounds, and now I'm going to go ahead and mark this external review round as complete. So I'm going to say they're done with their review. And there we are. So now it's out of the external review round step and back into draft. I could go in and make additional changes to the main document if I needed to. If I go back into attachments, we can see we're on to version 4 of this main document. I can go to Actions and go to Version History, and I can compare all the different versions of the document. So I can compare the second party's version with the version that the first internal reviewer added, or that one of the versions with the original version, or the versions with the changes that I made to the contract. You can compare any of those. But once I'm ready, I can go ahead and submit it for approval. So I'll go ahead and just submit for approval. And now what I can do is click on View Contract and then go back to approvals. So what the system is going to do is it's going to compile all of the documents that I've put into the print order into a single PDF document. So if I click on View Contract here, you can see here's the PDF document. And then the first step in the workflow is just a step for me to add any ad hoc approvals that I need to, right? So if I don't need any ad hoc approvals at all, I can just go to Contract Actions, click Approve, and then upload the signed document, right? If I do need approvals, what I can do is click Add Ad Hoc Step. I can select an ad hoc approver, give them a comment, and then click Save, and that's going to add an ad hoc approval step and ask them to review and potentially approve the contract. But for this case, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to go ahead and approve it out of this step. And now it's going to go to this upload signed document step. So if I had gotten the contract signed outside of the system, this is the place where I can upload that signed document. So what I would do is I'd go to Contract Actions, and then I would click Upload Fully Executed Contract. So if I had previously uploaded a fully executed and signed contract, what I would do is I would just use the full contract PDF, and then I would select a fully executed date. So I can say it was actually signed back on the 19th. And then I would click Save Changes. If it were at this point where I were uploading a fully executed contract that was signed outside of the system, this is where I would click Upload File. I would select the file, select the fully executed date, and then click Save Changes. So depends on whether you had gotten this fully executed and signed before you started the process in this system, or if you did use the authoring capabilities, sent it out for review rounds, and then if you got it signed outside of the system, but you had it reviewed and tracked the changes inside the system, that's when you'd use this option. But we'll go ahead and just use the full contract PDF and click Save Changes. And that's how essentially we can author a contract when we're not using the electronic signature functionality. Next, what I'd like to do is show you how we can author a contract using the electronic signature functionality available in the application. So let's do this. I'm going to just copy this contract record and make some slight changes to it to show you that functionality. Okay, so we've got our attachments here. And this time on the header, I'm going to say, yes, I do want to use electronic signature. I'm not going to get it authored outside of the system. I'm going to use the system to get it signed. So now I'm going to go to e-signature. And here, now that I am saying that I want to get it electronically signed in the system, obviously this e-signature step occurs in the left-hand menu. So you can see it in the left-hand menu. And I'm going to set up some settings. So if I click Edit here, one, you can designate whether you want the signers to sign sequentially or in parallel. So do you want one person to have to sign first and then the next person and then the next person, or can any of them sign in any order just as long as we get all the signatures? So typically it's going to be sequential. And then you're going to select how you want the placement of the signature blocks to go, right? So you can either say, I'm going to manually select where all the signature blocks are going to be placed, or you're going to say, I want the e-signature application to automatically place the signature block. So you should always choose manual placement unless you are A, using one of the templates that are pre-built for you, and B, the number of signers are as expected, right? So if the template is expecting 2 signers, but you, for whatever reason, have to have 3 or 4 signers, that's not the expected number of signers that the template was designed for, right? So in that case, you would use manual placement. But if the template was designed for 2 signature blocks and you have 2 signers and you're using one of the pre-built templates and the pre-built template has all the signature text tags in it, and everything is in green and rosy and everything turned out perfectly, then you can select automatic placement. But in this case, we'll choose manual placement and we'll go ahead and add our signers. So we'll click Add Signer and we'll select a contracting party. And if they have contacts in here, you'll be able to select from the contacts, but I'll go ahead and manually enter a signer.
Und det var en mye.
Okay, and we'll click Save Changes. And then we'll add another signer, this time for California State University. Okay, after we've added our signers and in the appropriate signing order, again, authoring the contract would be exactly the same. Filling out all the rest of that would be the same. The only difference I'm showing you is in the electronic signature. So we'll go ahead and submit this for approval. And we'll go back to our approvals. And I'm just going to go ahead and approve this through this ad hoc step. But you'll notice that there are some additional electronic signature actions here. So after I approve this, it's going to go into a signature robot. So this is going to send the contract main document to Adobe. And after it sends it to Adobe, it's going to wait in this e-signature setup step if I selected that I wanted to manually place the signature blocks. Okay. If I said I wanted automatic placement, it would skip this and it would automatically send the document out to the signers and have them sign it. But because I said I wanted to manually place the blocks, this is where I can go into contract actions and launch the e-signature application, in this case, Adobe Sign. Okay, so as I scroll down, you'll see that I've already placed signature text tags in here. So it actually does already have the spots where we should sign. But just imagine if these were not here. So we'll just remove these. I would need to go in and put in the signature blocks manually, right? So I would go in here and I would select, okay, this is the second party. So I need their signature to go right here. And maybe I need to shrink this a little bit. Put it right there. Maybe I need to put their signature date right here. And then you can add, whatever signature blocks you need to. But we'll go ahead and select the other signer. And we'll add their signature here. Shrink it up just a bit. And we'll add the date here. Go. And like I said, you can add other tags as well. So if you wanted their title or their full name or their email address or the signature dates, you can add those. And when you're ready, when you're done setting up all the signature blocks, you can go ahead and click Send. And that's the manual placement part of this, right? So if I had done automatic placement, this system would have skipped all that because it would have assumed that the signature blocks were already put in place for me, and I wouldn't have had to put those in place. So the rest of the process is going to be the exact same, whether I used automatic placement of the signature blocks or if I had to manually place the signature blocks. So let's take a look at the notifications that the users will receive. So here's the email that the second party, oops, sorry about that. Let me pull that back up. That's better. Here's the email that the second party receives. So they can click on review and sign, click on start. And just FYI, this is only going to show up because we're in a test environment. And they can go ahead and sign the document. We'll apply that one. And the date gets put in here automatically. Click to sign. So now the second party has, the first signer, who happens to be the second party, has successfully signed the contract. And now Adobe Sign is going to email the first party and ask them to sign the document. So here is the first party signer. They, again, can review the contract, and I'll need to log out because I'm logged in multiple times. 1 second. There we go. And we'll click start. And here's them, the first party signing. And here's their date. Click to sign. And now your first party has successfully signed the contract. So you'll notice that the contract manager can keep track of all the signers on this e-signature page. So this will let them know, what the signing order they set up was and the status of each signer. So as I refresh this, the first signer has completed, and then the Adobe Sign has sent the document out to the second signer. And if I wait just a little bit and refresh this, now the system will refresh and find that the second signer has also signed the document. And what's going to happen is this status of the contract is going to change from out for signature to executed in future. And whenever the start date occurs for the contract, it'll change to executed in effect. So there it is. Both signatures have been completed. The contract status is now executed in future. And if we view the contract record, it will be a fully signed and executed record. So we got both of our signatures there. And we even got an Adobe electronic signature audit page as well. All right, so that's about it for our demo today.